Friends, I am indeed honored and privileged to have been invited by India Today, a magazine that I must confess I have been reading avidly, and I take this opportunity to congratulate the founding editors and other members of the India Today family on an outstanding performance over so many years. It's also an honor to share the stage with Dr. Fareed Zakaria. The pieces he has written in Newsweek in recent times have been very insightful, and I have gained a lot from the insights he has given us on recent events. You said, Dr. Zakaria, that the world changed for us on September 11, but I think in India it changed for us much earlier. The last I can think of is towards the end of 1989, when events unfolded in a very complicated way for us, consequent on the abduction of the daughter of our Home Minister. Even before that, 10 years earlier, we had seen what terrorist violence could do to one of our most prosperous states, where things were fomented from across the border and perceived grievances, economic woes, or factors causing distress in the society were exploited for political ends. You have covered the larger picture and made many observations about the way India has progressed. There are a number of issues, but I would today confine myself to saying that in 1947, the people of India inherited an extremely bad picture. And if you see the progress in economic terms that had been achieved in the last 50 years, it was almost zero growth with a burgeoning population. The government had to deal with the problems created by partition, settlement of refugees, scarcity of food, total absence of infrastructure. So if you throw your mind back, there is a lot which we must note, while at the same time I fully agree with you that the name of the game today is economic progress, efficient management of the economy, and there is no quick path to great power status if you are not able to be interesting to others in terms of doing business or attracting investment. To come back quickly, as time is short, I would like to cover very briefly the security scenario in which we find ourselves. At the best of times, we live in a very troubled neighborhood, and I had occasion to travel to most of our neighboring countries. I worked for 3 years in Sri Lanka from 81 to 84. I have been on official trips many times to Pakistan, Nepal, Bangladesh. I have even spent some leave in Myanmar and seen the problems of those unfortunate people in the late 70s. I've even passed through Kabul airport, and I still recall the images during the Soviet occupation of Afghani women going about their business at the airport with tremendous self-confidence and self-assurance. But the only place I have not been to in the neighborhood is Bhutan, and I think that's the only area which has remained free of terrorist violence. I would like to mention, and something which is very well known, so I'll try to be very quick about it, that when a group of people or agencies of any state start using the terrorist method to achieve their objectives, it complicates life not only for the government but actually for the community, and especially in the areas which have been targeted. What are these challenges which get created? First of all, you see the most cynical use of every opportunity that is available. catch hold of every weakness of the system and capitalize on it. If you can appeal to religious bigotry, you do that. If you can exploit perceived wrongs and economic woes, you do that. If there are inefficiencies in the system, you make use of that. If you can foment communal tensions, you take that road. So what terrorist violence does to a society is to force it to think as to what is wrong in the way we are governing or we have organized our affairs. That is the only redeeming feature which I find from the activities of these people. It forces us to think. How do we respond? The cutting edge of your response has to be the security forces. That's the easier part of it. It's very complicated to implement, but what you have to think about is all the opportunities and weaknesses which a terrorist organization is exploiting and try to improve your act, get it together. Now, first, the legal framework. We have had a lot of debate on POTO and TADA, and that debate must take place because it brings before you the difficult choices which a state has to make between arming the security agencies with the power that they need and also protecting the citizen from arbitrary use of that power or misuse of that power. But what we have seen in recent debates is too much harping on the past, not so much concern of what is the task that the security forces are faced with. And in this debate, I personally, being an administrator, have a feeling that the most difficult task which our members of our security forces are performing is often lost sight of. This has two results. One is that the various issues don't get discussed from the standpoint of public interest or the need to give adequate powers to the police personnel or the army soldiers working in the aid to civil power, but it gets an exercise, as it must in a democracy, of a kind of a political game and criticizing each other and taking postures which would help a political party one way or the other. Now, I feel that this argument that the Indian Penal Code and Code of Criminal Procedure is enough is on the face of it quite absurd. It shows that the enormity of the problem is not being fully appreciated. You can't have a construct imposed on the police which has been created for normal times. Because if that is adequate, then I think we have over-provided the legal powers to the police. If we have to deal with a situation where the police has difficulty in putting up witnesses, has difficulty in motivating and encouraging magistrates and courts to hear cases. We have had problems in the old days in the Punjab where the courts at times won't sit. Bail application would be granted on site because the people didn't want to get involved or get into a situation where they came under terrorist threat. In this situation, we have seen ourselves that the police were left on their own. They had no help from other sections of society or organs of the government. The result is, since police have to survive, they take extraordinary measures and you have summary action in encounter type of situations. So I feel not providing an adequate framework for the police and soldiers to function in is to evade the issue, and it causes problems. The problem particular to India is that if evidence before a police officer is not admissible, and we know what is the standard of evidence which witnesses give, the reluctance of our citizens to just appear in court, the task of taking a case to successful prosecution becomes extremely difficult. The same goes for expediting court process. Special courts, special magistrates are provisions which have been tried in the past And I think we have to think in those terms. The other aspect is reorientation and training of the police. In most areas, and it was my experience as Home Secretary also, that they had not the competence to deal with this new situation, which required them to seek adequate cooperation from the people of that area. The result was that while they had successes in terms of capturing terrorists or eliminating them, they lost the sympathy and the support of the people. Then equipment and training, other aspects of detail, I'll leave it and go to information management. I think the interaction that should take place between press, TV personnel and the government leaves much to be desired. United States after September 11, the way they acted and got together is something which we have not only to capture from time to time, as we have done at the time of Kargil or whenever any 71 and so on, but it has to be an enduring feature of the total response that is made against terrorism. I think the situation about what can be referred to as transnational terrorism, a colleague of mine in Udaipur, I was attending the same conference as Dr. Raja Mohan at Udaipur, came up with TNT, transnational terrorism. Now this aspect is the major one, which is a challenge not only to India, but all the countries in India's neighborhood. We have seen that dealing with terrorist violence is bad enough and a very difficult thing. But in case there is a platform available to a terrorist unit and he has support of agencies of a state, the game becomes terribly complicated. And this is what we have been seeing. There is a political element introduced, there is a sanctuary, there is financing, and it is in this area that I think India and all the neighboring states will have to sit together and cooperate to see that we are able to put up a concerted response and see to it that we deal with them effectively without giving them any quarter. Today, the situation which we have seized upon by joining the campaign against terrorism is something which has to be further, the impact of it has to be further maximized. And if we work along with the international community, I think we can deny a whole lot of room and assistance which these people are getting, and this is an area which we must focus on. I think it's some few minutes should be left to questioning. I see the hand of Dr. Raja Mohan. I thank you all for the patient hearing. Raja.